The success of Ethan's idea didn't just change his life, it changed the galaxy. Black hole reactors began appearing on planets across the stars, providing clean and limitless energy to communities that had once struggled to survive. Factories ran more efficiently, cities grew brighter, and colonies on distant frontiers thrived thanks to the new technology. The era of scarcity was fading, replaced by hope for a better future. Ethan watched it all unfold from his home on Ragnarok 7. After spending months working with the Galactic Science Institute, GSI, he had returned to his roots, finding comfort in the familiar rhythms of life. He helped his parents tend to their bioengineered crops, played games with his little sister, Lily, and shared stories with the villagers who had raised him. But even as he embraced the simplicity of his world, he stayed connected to the larger universe. News outlets continued to cover his story, calling him the boy who reshaped the galaxy. Schools included his work in their science lessons, inspiring students to think creatively and solve problems in unconventional ways. Scientists built on his concept, exploring how biological systems could be used in other fields like medicine, engineering, and environmental restoration. Ethan's idea had sparked a revolution, not just in energy production, but in the way people approach challenges. Despite his fame, Ethan remained humble. When asked about his legacy during an interview, he shrugged and said, "I'm just glad I could help. If my homework assignment made life easier for even one person, it was worth it." Rachel Kim visited him often, bringing updates from the GSI and sharing plans for future projects. She told him about new reactors being built, breakthroughs in nanobot design, and proposals to adapt his concept for stabilizing unstable stars. Each time she came, she reminded him how much his contribution meant. "You started something incredible," she said. "Don't ever forget that." Dr. Alan Mitchell also reached out occasionally, thanking Ethan for pushing him to think outside the box. "Your perspective changed everything," he admitted during one call. "We were too focused on machines and equations. You showed us the value of looking at nature for answers." As the years passed, Ethan found a balance between his two worlds. He traveled occasionally to consult on new projects or give speeches at universities, but he always returned to Ragnarok 7, the planet that had shaped him. Its storms, its struggles, and its beauty remained his anchor. It reminded him where he came from and kept him grounded amid the whirlwind of attention. One evening, as he sat on a hill overlooking the rugged landscape, Ethan thought about the future. The galaxy still held countless mysteries waiting to be solved. Faster than light travel, curing incurable diseases, understanding the origins of the universe. These were challenges that would inspire generations to come. And maybe somewhere out there, another unlikely mind would rise to meet them. For now, though, Ethan was content. He looked up at the stars, feeling both small and significant. Small because the universe was vast and full of wonders beyond comprehension. Significant because he had proven that even someone from a harsh, forgotten corner of the galaxy could make a difference. His journey had taught him many things: the importance of resilience, the power of creative thinking, and the value of staying true to oneself. As he gazed at the night sky, he smiled. The galaxy was brighter now, not just because of black hole reactors, but because of the spark of hope ignited by a boy who dared to dream. And so, Ethan Carter's story became more than just a tale of science or innovation. It was a reminder that greatness could come from anywhere, that simple ideas could lead to extraordinary outcomes, and that no matter how far one traveled, home would always be part of the journey. With the success of the Black Hole Energy Project, Ethan's life changed in ways he never imagined. He became a symbol of hope and innovation, invited to speak at conferences, attend award ceremonies, and meet influential leaders from across the galaxy. His face appeared on news broadcasts, magazines, and even holographic billboards in major cities. People called him a genius, a visionary, and a hero. But despite all the attention, Ethan stayed grounded. During interviews, he always credited his family, his teachers, and the team at the Galactic Science Institute, GSI. "I didn't do this alone," he would say. "My idea came from watching how things work on Ragnarok 7, how plants and animals survive together. If anything, I'm proof that sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones." Rachel Kim, who had become both a mentor and a friend, noticed how carefully Ethan handled his newfound fame. While others might have let it go to their heads, Ethan remained humble. He continued working with the GSI team, helping refine the nanobot technology and exploring new applications for it. He also made time to visit schools, sharing his story with students and encouraging them to dream big. "You don't need fancy equipment or advanced degrees to make a difference," he told them. "Just think creatively and trust yourself." Dr. Alan Mitchell, once skeptical of Ethan's involvement, now openly praised him. "This boy has taught us all a valuable lesson," he said during a press conference. "Sometimes, solving the hardest problems requires looking at them from a completely different perspective." Ethan reminded us not to underestimate the power of fresh ideas. But not everyone was happy about Ethan's rise to fame. Some scientists grumbled that too much credit was being given to a teenager. Others argued that the biological approach was risky and unproven compared to traditional methods. Despite these criticisms, the results spoke for themselves. The first black hole reactor went online within a year, providing clean, limitless energy to a struggling colony on the outskirts of the galaxy. More reactors followed, transforming economies and improving lives. As the months passed, Ethan began to feel torn between two worlds. On one hand, he loved being part of something so important, contributing to discoveries that could shape the future. On the other hand, he missed the simplicity of life on Ragnarok 7. He missed the quiet mornings tending to crops, the laughter of his little sister, and the warmth of his parents' home. Fame and recognition were exciting, but they couldn't replace the sense of belonging he felt on his harsh yet beautiful planet. One evening, as he sat alone in his apartment on Nova Centauri, Ethan received a message from his mother. It was short but heartfelt. "We're proud of you, no matter where you are. But remember, home will always be here when you're ready." Her words brought tears to his eyes. No matter how far he traveled or how many awards he received, Ragnarok 7 would always be a part of him. After finishing his current projects at the GSI, Ethan decided it was time to return home. For a while, at least. When he arrived back on Ragnarok 7, the villagers greeted him with cheers and hugs. To them, he wasn't just a celebrity. He was still Ethan, the boy who helped fix broken tools and shared stories under the stars. Over the next few weeks, he spent his days reconnecting with his family, working in the fields, and teaching local children about science and problem-solving. Still, Ethan knew his journey wasn't over. The galaxy had shown him the incredible impact one person could have, and he wanted to keep making a difference. For now, though, he was content to enjoy the peace and simplicity of home. As he stood on a hill overlooking the rugged landscape, he thought about the future. There were still mysteries to solve, challenges to overcome, and dreams to chase, and wherever those dreams took him, he knew he'd carry the lessons of Ragnarok 7 with him every step of the way. The final stage of the project was approaching, and excitement buzzed through the halls of the Galactic Science Institute, GSI. After months of hard work, the team was ready to test their nanobot system in a real-world setting. They had chosen a small dormant black hole on the edge of explored space, a safe location for their first trial outside simulations. If successful, this would mark a historic moment, humanity's first step towards safely harnessing energy from black holes. Ethan felt a mix of nerves and determination as he prepared for the mission. He wasn't just an observer anymore. Rachel insisted that he join the expedition team. "You're part of this," she told him firmly when he hesitated. "Your idea brought us here. You deserve to see it through." The journey to the black hole took several days aboard a state-of-the-art research vessel. Ethan spent most of his time staring out the window at the endless expanse of stars, thinking about how much his life had changed. Back home on Ragnarok 7, people were celebrating his success, but he couldn't help feeling like he was still the same person. The boy who fixed broken tools and helped grow crops hadn't disappeared. He'd simply grown into someone capable of dreaming bigger dreams. When they arrived at the site, the crew worked quickly to set up the equipment. Giant drones deployed the nanobots near the black hole, forming the protective barrier exactly as planned. Ethan watched the process from the ship's control room, his heart pounding with anticipation. On the monitors, streams of data flowed in, showing how the nanobots responded to the intense gravitational forces. For hours, everyone held their breath. At first, everything seemed to go smoothly. The barrier held steady, containing the black hole's energy without collapsing. But then, a warning flashed on the screen. A sudden fluctuation in the black hole's activity threatened to destabilize the system. "We need to act fast," Dr. Alan Mitchell shouted, his voice tense. Technicians scrambled to adjust the controls, while others monitored the nanobots' performance. Ethan stepped forward, his mind racing. "What if we mimic what happens during storms on Ragnarok 7? He suggested. "When the environment gets unstable, plants release chemicals that strengthen their roots. Maybe we can trigger something similar in the nanobots." Rachel nodded immediately. "It's worth a try." She relayed the idea to the team, and within minutes, they sent a signal to activate a self-reinforcement protocol in the nanobots. Slowly but surely, the barrier began to stabilize once again. The room erupted into cheers as the system returned to normal. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes as he realized what they had achieved. Not only had they proven his concept worked, but they had also overcome one of its biggest challenges in real time. For the first time, humanity had successfully harnessed energy from a black hole. News of the achievement spread across the galaxy almost instantly. Reporters hailed Ethan as a hero, calling him the boy who tamed the stars. Scientists praised his creativity and perseverance, crediting him with opening doors to new possibilities in energy production. Even skeptics admitted that his unconventional approach had paid off. Back on Ragnarok 7, celebrations broke out once more. Villagers gathered in the square, lighting lanterns and sharing stories late into the night. Ethan's parents watched footage of the mission, tears streaming down their faces. Lily proudly declared to anyone who would listen, "My brother saved the galaxy." Despite the praise, Ethan remained humble. When asked about his feelings during interviews, he simply said, "I didn't do this alone. It was a team effort. And honestly, I just thought about what works back home, how nature finds ways to survive. That's all." As the expedition team returned to Nova Centauri, plans were already underway to expand the technology. Governments and corporations lined up to fund further development, eager to bring black hole reactors to planets across the galaxy. For Ethan, though, the greatest reward wasn't fame or fortune. It was knowing that he had made a difference. He stood on the observation deck of the research vessel, gazing at the stars once more. The universe seemed vast and full of mysteries, but for the first time, Ethan felt like he belonged among them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he could face them, one step at a time. The next phase of testing was the most critical yet. The team at the Galactic Science Institute, GSI, had refined Ethan's idea, combining the nanobots with additional systems inspired by the natural balance he had described. Now it was time to see if their hard work would pay off. The simulation environment they used was designed to mimic the extreme conditions near a black hole. If the nanobots could survive and function in this setting, it would be a major step forward. Ethan stood nervously in the observation room, watching as technicians adjusted the controls. Rachel and Dr. Alan Mitchell were there too, their faces tense with anticipation. This was the moment they had been working toward for weeks. Success or failure would depend on what happened next. "All right, everyone," Dr. Mitchell said, his voice steady but firm. "Let's begin." The simulation started slowly. On the large screen in front of them, streams of data appeared, showing how the nanobots responded to the simulated black hole's gravitational pull and energy output. At first, everything seemed fine. The nanobots formed a protective barrier, adapting to changes just as the team had hoped. But then, something unexpected happened. A sudden surge in energy caused part of the barrier to destabilize. Ethan's heart sank. He clenched his fists, resisting the urge to look away. "It's not holding," someone muttered in the background. For a moment, the room fell silent. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see if the system would recover. Then something remarkable occurred. The nanobots began repairing themselves, working together to reinforce the weak spots. It was as if they were communicating, sharing resources to restore balance. Within minutes, the barrier stabilized once again. The simulation continued without further issues. The observation room erupted into cheers. Technicians hugged each other, and even Dr. Mitchell allowed himself a rare smile. "It worked," Rachel said, turning to Ethan. "Your idea, it actually worked." Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. He hadn't realized how much he'd been holding his breath. His hands trembled slightly as he ran them through his hair. "I can't believe it," he whispered. Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder. "You should believe it. This is your vision, Ethan. You made this possible." Over the next few days, the team analyzed the results in detail. The nanobot's ability to self-repair and adapt confirmed that Ethan's concept was viable. While there was still more work to do before the technology could be used in real-world conditions, the breakthrough was undeniable. News of the successful test spread quickly, reaching every corner of the galaxy. Back on Ragnarok 7, Ethan's family gathered around their small communication device to watch live updates from Nova Centauri. His parents beamed with pride, while Lily jumped up and down, shouting, "That's my brother." Even the villagers who had once doubted Ethan's journey now celebrated his achievement. They hung banners in the square and organized a feast in his honor. At the Institute, Ethan faced a mix of emotions. He was proud of what he had accomplished, but he also felt the weight of expectations growing heavier. Reporters hounded him for interviews, and scientists from other fields reached out, asking for advice on unrelated projects. Some people even suggested he leave school entirely to focus on his newfound role as a galactic innovator. Rachel noticed how drained Ethan looked and pulled him aside one afternoon. "You don't have to do everything they ask," she said gently. "This is your life, Ethan. Don't lose sight of who you are." Her words reminded him of home, the simplicity of tending to crops, playing games with Lily, and dreaming under the stars. No matter how far he traveled or how famous he became, those roots would always define him. With renewed determination, Ethan decided to stay true to himself. He continued working with the team, learning as much as he could, but he also set boundaries. He declined unnecessary interviews and focused on finishing his education. As the project moved closer to its final stages, Ethan reflected on how far he'd come. From a quiet boy on a harsh planet to a key figure in solving one of the galaxy's greatest challenges, his journey had been anything but ordinary. And though he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, he felt ready to face whatever came next. As the weeks passed, Ethan found himself caught in a whirlwind of attention and pressure. The media frenzy showed no signs of slowing down. Reporters camped outside the Galactic Science Institute, GSI, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Deathworld prodigy. Every day, new headlines appeared. Ethan Carter's black hole breakthrough stuns scientists. From Ragnarok 7 to Nova Centauri, the boy who changed science, and can a teenager solve the galaxy's energy crisis? At first, Ethan tried to ignore the noise. He focused on his work in the lab, determined to prove that his idea wasn't just a fluke, but it was hard not to feel overwhelmed. Back home on Ragnarok 7, he had been an ordinary kid, someone who fixed broken tools and helped grow crops. Now, people treated him like he was some kind of genius or superhero. It didn't feel right. Rachel noticed how uneasy Ethan seemed and decided to step in. One evening, after a long day of testing and simulations, she invited him to join her for dinner at a quiet cafe near the Institute. "You've been handling all this really well," she said as they sat down. "But I can tell it's getting to you." Ethan sighed, picking at his food. "I don't know why everyone is making such a big deal about me. I didn't do anything special. I just wrote down some thoughts. You did more than that, Rachel replied. You brought a fresh perspective to a problem that's stumped experts for centuries. That's rare, Ethan, and important. But what if I mess it up? He asked, his voice quieter now. What if my idea doesn't work? Everyone expects so much from me. Rachel smiled gently. No one expects perfection. All we're asking is that you keep trying. You've already inspired us to think differently. That's worth something. Her words helped calm Ethan's nerves, but the doubts lingered. At the Institute, some scientists continued to question his role in the project. Dr. Alan Mitchell, though supportive in public, privately worried that relying on a teenager might damage the team's credibility. We need concrete results, he told Rachel during one meeting. Not just theories. The tension came to a head when the team hit a major roadblock. The nanobots they were developing struggled to adapt to simulated black hole conditions. They kept breaking apart under pressure, leaving the researchers frustrated. Some suggested scrapping the biological approach altogether and returning to traditional methods. Others argued that abandoning Ethan's idea would be a mistake. During one particularly heated debate, Ethan spoke up for the first time. Maybe we're thinking too small, he said hesitantly. Everyone turned to look at him. On Ragnarok 7, survival isn't about fighting against nature. It's about working with it. What if the nanobots aren't supposed to handle everything on their own? What if they need help? His suggestion sparked a new round of brainstorming. The team began exploring ways to combine the nanobots with other systems, mimicking the symbiotic relationships Ethan had described from his home planet. Slowly, progress started to pick up again. The breakthrough wasn't perfect, but it was enough to reignite hope. Meanwhile, the media coverage reached Ragnarok 7. Ethan's family watched interviews and read articles about him, feeling both proud and concerned. His little sister, Lily, recorded messages for him every night, telling him funny stories and reminding him to eat properly. His parents sent care packages filled with homemade snacks and notes of encouragement. Back on Nova Centauri, Ethan leaned on these reminders of home to stay grounded. He knew he couldn't let fear or doubt stop him, not when so many people were counting on him. As the team prepared for the next phase of testing, he reminded himself of the lessons he'd learned growing up. Resilience, creativity, and the power of thinking outside the box. For the first time since arriving, Ethan felt a glimmer of confidence. Maybe he didn't have all the answers, but he was willing to keep trying. And sometimes, that was enough. When Ethan arrived on Nova Centauri, he felt like he had stepped into another world. The planet was nothing like Ragnarok 7. Its skies were clear and blue, its air fresh and clean. Towering buildings made of glass and metal stretched high into the clouds, their surfaces shimmering in the sunlight. People moved quickly through the streets, dressed in sleek clothing and carrying advanced gadgets. Everything seemed so polished and perfect. It was overwhelming. Rachel Kim guided Ethan through the bustling city toward the Galactic Science Institute, GSI. Along the way, she explained more about what they hoped to achieve with his idea. Your concept is unique, she said. We've never thought about using biological systems for black hole energy extraction before. It's risky, but it could be revolutionary. Ethan nodded, trying to take it all in. He still couldn't believe that something he came up with in his small classroom back home had brought him here. As they entered the GSI building, he looked around in awe. The lobby was enormous, filled with scientists working at holographic displays and robots zipping around carrying equipment. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Dr. Alan Mitchell greeted them as they reached the research lab. He shook Ethan's hand firmly and gave him a brief smile. Welcome, Ethan, he said. You've caused quite a stir around here. Let's see if we can turn your idea into reality. Over the next few days, Ethan worked closely with Rachel, Dr. Mitchell, and the rest of the team. They showed him how to use the advanced tools and technology in the lab. At first, everything felt unfamiliar and intimidating. The machines hummed with power, and the equations on the screens looked like a foreign language. But Ethan didn't give up. He reminded himself of the lessons he learned growing up on Ragnarok 7. Adapt, persevere, and find solutions even when things seem impossible. The team began refining Ethan's proposal. They focused on creating tiny organisms, nanobots, that could form a protective barrier around a black hole. These nanobots would mimic the natural resilience of the plants and animals Ethan was familiar with, adjusting to changes in the environment and maintaining stability. It was a complex process, but Ethan's insights proved invaluable. His understanding of balance and harmony helped guide the project forward. As word of Ethan's involvement spread, the media took notice. Reporters swarmed the institute, eager to interview the boy who had come from a death world to solve one of the galaxy's biggest problems. Cameras flashed, and questions flew at him from every direction. "How does it feel to be called a genius?" one reporter asked. "What inspired your idea?" Another chimed in. Ethan struggled to answer. He didn't see himself as a genius or a hero. To him, he was just a kid who had written down some thoughts for a school assignment. But the attention kept growing. News outlets across the galaxy ran stories about him, calling him the Deathworld prodigy, and speculating about how his discovery might change the future of energy production. Despite the chaos, Ethan stayed focused on the work. He spent long hours in the lab, brainstorming with the team and learning as much as he could. Rachel became a mentor to him, patiently explaining concepts and encouraging him to trust his instincts. "You have a gift," she told him one evening. "Don't let anyone make you doubt it." But not everyone was supportive. Some scientists dismissed Ethan's contribution, claiming his lack of formal training made his ideas unreliable. Others argued that relying on biological systems was too unpredictable. Even Dr. Mitchell occasionally expressed doubts, though he admitted the simulations were promising. Through it all, Ethan remained determined. He knew his idea wasn't perfect, but he believed in its potential. And as the team worked tirelessly to bring his vision to life, he allowed himself to dream. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something extraordinary, not just for him, but for the entire galaxy. Ethan's peaceful life on Ragnarok 7 was about to be disrupted in a way he could never have anticipated. One morning, as he walked to school with his little sister, Lily, they noticed something unusual. A group of strangers had gathered near the village square. They wore sleek uniforms and carried strange devices that glinted in the dim sunlight filtering through the planet's thick atmosphere. Ethan slowed down, curious but cautious. Strangers rarely visited Ragnarok 7, and when they did, it usually meant trouble. By the time Ethan reached school, the entire village was buzzing with rumors. Some said the visitors were scientists from another planet. Others claimed they were government officials looking for resources. No one knew for sure, but everyone agreed it was odd. Even Ms. Bennett seemed distracted during class, glancing at her communicator more often than usual. Later that day, after classes ended, Ethan decided to investigate. He told Lily to go home and headed toward the square. As he approached, he saw the strangers talking to a small crowd of villagers. One of them, a woman with dark hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward and addressed the group. "We're here looking for someone," she said in a clear, confident voice. "A student named Ethan Carter." Ethan froze. His heart began to race. Why would these people be looking for him? He hadn't done anything special, at least, nothing he could think of. Slowly, he raised his hand. "I'm Ethan," he said hesitantly. The woman smiled and walked over to him. "Hello, Ethan. My name is Rachel Kim. I work at the Galactic Science Institute. We've been reviewing your recent homework assignment, and we need to talk to you." Ethan blinked in confusion. "My homework?" Rachel nodded. "Yes. Your idea about using biological systems to extract energy from black holes. It's brilliant. We've been running simulations based on your concept, and the results are promising. We think you might have stumbled onto something groundbreaking." Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. His simple homework assignment had somehow caught the attention of some of the smartest people in the galaxy. He felt a mix of excitement and disbelief. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I mean, I just wrote down some random thoughts. I didn't think anyone would take it seriously." Rachel laughed softly. "Sometimes the best ideas come from thinking outside the box. That's exactly what you did. And now we'd like to bring you to Nova Centauri so you can work with us directly. What do you say?" Ethan's mind raced. This was an opportunity of a lifetime, but it also meant leaving behind everything he knew. His family, his friends, his home, they were all here on Ragnarok 7. Could he really step into a world so different from his own? That evening, Ethan sat with his parents, explaining what had happened. They listened quietly, their expressions a mix of pride and worry. "This is a big decision," his father said finally. "But if this is what you want to do, we'll support you." After much thought, Ethan agreed to go. The next morning, he packed a small bag with essentials and said goodbye to his family. Lily hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You'll come back, right?" she asked. "Of course," Ethan promised. "Nothing will change that." Accompanied by Rachel and her team, Ethan boarded a sleek spacecraft that looked nothing like the patched-up shuttles he was used to seeing. As the ship lifted off, he gazed out the window at the shrinking landscape of Ragnarok 7. For the first time in his life, he was leaving the only home he'd ever known. The journey to Nova Centauri took several days, giving Ethan plenty of time to think. He still couldn't believe how far his simple idea had taken him. From the harsh plains of a death world to the gleaming towers of a galactic research center, his life was changing faster than he could process. But deep down, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference, not just for himself, but for the entire galaxy. Ethan's days on Ragnarok 7 continued as they always had. He woke up early, helped his family with their daily chores, and spent the rest of his time either in school or exploring the rugged terrain around his home. Life on a death world wasn't easy, but Ethan had grown used to it. The storms, the toxic air, and the constant struggle for survival were just part of who he was. What he didn't realize was that his unique upbringing would soon play a key role in solving one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries. One afternoon, after finishing his lessons, Ethan decided to take a walk outside. His little sister, Lily, begged to come along, so he grabbed a protective mask for her and headed out. They walked through the rocky fields where their family grew bioengineered crops. These plants were specially designed to survive in the harsh conditions of Ragnarok 7. Some could filter toxins from the air, while others stored water deep within their roots. Ethan often marveled at how these simple organisms worked together to keep his family alive. As they wandered, Ethan's thoughts drifted back to his homework assignment. He still couldn't believe he'd written about black holes, of all things. It seemed so far removed from his everyday life. But then again, maybe it wasn't. On Ragnarok 7, everything depended on balance. Plants, animals, and humans relied on each other to endure the planet's challenges. Maybe the same principle could apply to black holes. If only there was a way to create a system that mimicked nature's harmony, perhaps scientists could safely extract energy without causing chaos. Back at the Galactic Science Institute, GSI, Dr. Alan Mitchell and Rachel Kim were running preliminary simulations based on Ethan's idea. At first, Dr. Mitchell remained skeptical. "This is too vague," he muttered, staring at the data on his screen. "We can't build something like this without more specifics." Rachel, however, refused to give up. "It's a starting point," she argued. "We can fill in the gaps. Look at the concept, using biological systems to stabilize the process. That's genius, even if it's rough around the edges." To test the theory, the team created a simplified model. They imagined tiny, self-replicating organisms forming a kind of living shield around a black hole. These organisms would adapt to changes in the environment, much like the plants on Ragnarok 7 adjusted to storms and radiation. The goal was to contain the black hole's energy while allowing it to be harvested safely. The results of the simulation were surprising. While not perfect, the model showed potential. The biological system appeared capable of stabilizing the extraction process, preventing the black hole from collapsing under pressure. It wasn't a complete solution, but it was a step in the right direction. A step inspired by a boy who had never set foot in a high-tech lab. News of the simulation spread quickly. Scientists at the GSI began discussing Ethan's idea in meetings, debates, and late-night brainstorming sessions. Some dismissed it as too unconventional, while others praised its originality. Word eventually reached the media, and reporters scrambled to learn more about the mysterious student behind the groundbreaking proposal. Meanwhile, Ethan remained oblivious to the growing buzz. Days turned into weeks, and life on Ragnarok 7 carried on as usual. He helped his parents repair equipment, played games with Lily, and studied for his next exam. Occasionally, he wondered what Ms. Bennett thought of his homework, but he assumed she had long since forgotten about it. One evening, as Ethan sat on a hill overlooking the barren landscape, he reflected on how much his world had shaped him. Growing up on Ragnarok 7 taught him resilience, creativity, and the importance of working with what you had. He never imagined those lessons might one day have an impact beyond his small corner of the galaxy. Little did he know, his quiet life was about to change forever. Across the stars, people were talking about him, about the boy who dared to think differently. And soon, the attention would come knocking at his door, bringing with it opportunities and challenges he could scarcely imagine. For now, though, Ethan simply enjoyed the view, unaware that his name was already being whispered in awe among the galaxy's top minds. The next few days passed quietly for Ethan. He went back to his usual routine, helping his family with their crops and attending classes at school. His mind occasionally drifted to the homework assignment, but he didn't think much of it. After all, what were the chances that his rough idea about black holes would actually impress anyone? Most of the time, he figured Ms. Bennett would just smile politely, give him a decent grade, and move on. But things weren't as ordinary as they seemed. Across the galaxy, in a gleaming tower on the planet Nova Centauri, Dr. Alan Mitchell was having a bad week. As one of the top physicists at the Galactic Science Institute, GSI, he had spent years working on the same problem. Ethan had written about how to safely harness energy from black holes. Despite countless experiments, simulations, and late nights, progress had been painfully slow. The project was stuck, and funding was running low. His colleagues were starting to lose hope. Dr. Mitchell wasn't alone in his frustration. Rachel Kim, the young and ambitious researcher who worked under him, was equally determined to find a breakthrough. Unlike Dr. Mitchell, though, Rachel believed that fresh ideas could come from unexpected places. She often spent her free time reading papers and essays from lesser-known scientists, hoping to stumble upon something overlooked by the experts. It was during one of these searches that she came across Ethan's assignment. Ms. Bennett, impressed by Ethan's creativity, had forwarded his paper to a friend who worked at the GSI. That friend, curious about the unusual approach, shared it with others in the department. By the time Rachel found it, the document had already sparked whispers among the staff. Some dismissed it outright, saying it was too simplistic and lacked proper scientific rigor. Others, however, were intrigued by its boldness. Rachel read through Ethan's work carefully, her eyes widening as she reached the end. The proposal was far from polished. It lacked equations, technical details, and formal structure. But the core idea was fascinating. Instead of focusing on machines or advanced technology, Ethan suggested using biological systems inspired by nature to stabilize the extraction process. It reminded Rachel of biomimicry, a field that studied natural designs to solve human problems. Could this boy from a death world really be onto something? Excited, Rachel rushed to Dr. Mitchell's office. "You need to see this," she said, waving the printout in front of him. Dr. Mitchell sighed, rubbing his temples. "Rachel, I don't have time for amateur theories right now. We're barely keeping this project alive as it is." "I know it sounds crazy," Rachel replied, undeterred. "But hear me out. This kid, Ethan Carter. He grew up on Ragnarok 7, one of the harshest planets in the galaxy. He uses examples from his own environment to explain his concept. It's different. And maybe that's exactly what we need. Dr. Mitchell reluctantly took the paper and began reading. At first, he frowned, shaking his head at the lack of technical language. But as he continued, his expression softened. There was something oddly compelling about Ethan's perspective. It wasn't like anything he'd seen before. By the time he finished, Dr. Mitchell leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. Even if it's nonsense, Rachel added, isn't it worth testing? What do we have to lose? Dr. Mitchell hesitated. On one hand, the idea seemed ridiculous. On the other, they were running out of options. If there was even a small chance Ethan's proposal could lead somewhere, ignoring it would be foolish. Finally, he nodded. All right, he said. Let's run some basic simulations. But don't get your hopes up, Rachel. This is probably going nowhere. As the team at the GSI began analyzing Ethan's work, news of the unusual submission spread quickly. Word traveled from lab assistants to senior researchers, and soon, the entire institute was buzzing. Reporters caught wind of the story, eager to uncover who this mysterious student was and why his simple homework had captured the attention of the galaxy's brightest minds. Back on Ragnarok 7, Ethan remained completely unaware of the storm brewing light years away. Life went on as usual, filled with hard work, quiet moments, and dreams of a better future. For now, he had no idea that his name was about to become known across the stars, or that his humble attempt to complete a school assignment would leave the galaxy's top scientists speechless. In a distant corner of the galaxy, far from the bustling cities and shining skyscrapers of advanced civilizations, there was a planet known as Ragnarok 7. It wasn't like other planets. Its skies were often dark with storms, its ground cracked and barren, and its air thick with dangerous gases. Survival here was no easy task. People called it a death world, a place where only the strong and clever could live. But for Ethan Carter, it was home. Ethan was just an ordinary teenager trying to get through life on one of the harshest planets in the galaxy. He wasn't famous or special, at least not yet. Every day, he woke up early, helped his family tend to their bioengineered crops, and then headed off to school. School on Ragnarok 7 wasn't anything fancy. The building was old, the equipment outdated, but the teachers did their best to prepare students for life beyond the planet if they ever got the chance to leave. One morning, as Ethan sat in class, Ms. Laura Bennett, his science teacher, walked in holding a stack of papers. She had a warm smile, but also a strict reputation. "All right, everyone," she said, placing the papers on her desk. "Today, I have a homework assignment for you. It's simple, but I want you to think deeply about it." The students groaned. Homework was the last thing any of them wanted after spending hours helping their families survive the unforgiving environment outside. But Ms. Bennett ignored their complaints and continued. "I want each of you to write about how you would solve one of the galaxy's biggest scientific problems. You can pick anything. Energy shortages, faster than light travel, even medical advancements. Just make sure your solution is clear and logical." Ethan frowned. This didn't sound simple at all. He glanced around the room and saw his classmates scribbling ideas or staring blankly at their notebooks. For someone who spent most of his time figuring out how to keep plants alive in toxic soil, solving galactic scale issues felt impossible. Still, he decided to give it a try. After all, Ms. Bennett always encouraged her students to dream big. That evening, Ethan sat at the small table in his family's modest home, staring at a blank sheet of paper. His little sister, Lily, was playing nearby, while his parents worked on repairing a broken water purifier. The house was quiet except for the occasional rumble of thunder outside. Ethan tapped his pencil against the table, thinking hard. What problem should he choose? And more importantly, how could he possibly come up with a solution? Then it hit him. Over the years, he'd heard stories about black holes. those mysterious regions of space that swallowed everything, even light. Scientists had been trying for centuries to find ways to harness their incredible energy without causing catastrophic damage. It was considered one of the toughest challenges in astrophysics. Most people thought it was impossible, but Ethan had grown up solving impossible problems every single day. He grabbed his pencil and started writing. At first, his ideas were messy and unclear. He jotted down random thoughts about using barriers to contain the energy or finding ways to stabilize the black hole's chaotic behavior. Then he remembered something important. Back on Ragnarok 7, survival depended on balance. Plants, animals, and humans worked together in harmony to endure the harsh conditions. Maybe the same principle could apply to black holes. By the time he finished, Ethan had filled several pages with notes and sketches. His plan wasn't perfect, but it was different from anything he'd read about before. Instead of relying on heavy machinery or complex equations, he proposed using self-sustaining biological systems, similar to those found on his own planet, to safely extract energy from black holes. It sounded crazy, even to him, but it was the best he could do. When he handed in his assignment the next day, Ethan didn't expect much. He figured Ms. Bennett would grade it, give him some feedback, and that would be the end of it. Little did he know, his simple homework was about to change everything. For him, and for the entire galaxy.